Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Perfect Society. I'm Ulrich Hoffman, and you are watching the broadcast Coronavirus Tests Unreliable. People that have disease, coronavirus tests unreliable. People that have the disease test positive only 30 to 50% of the time. So let's go to the article immediately. Of course, it is vital to have an effective test that is reliable. And as long as there is no way, the question is also, is there a way? Can they just do a blood test to check if the virus is in the blood? They have even found it on doorknobs, so do we know by now whether it's an antibody-dependent virus or not? They should know that by now when they even have the whole DNA sequence, etc. So let's read the article on straitstimes.com. Here we read, even patients who definitely have the disease only come back positive 30% to 50% of the time, Professor Wang said. Testing throat swabs from potentially infected people also returns a lot of false negatives. Okay, so let's read this and put it on the test kit. Last night I also did an interesting broadcast. The story was originally published by Caixin Global. Open link, a new tab. So this is the version on straitstimes.com. Like always, I have to restart the text-to-speech engine. And it's almost there.
This story was originally published by Caixin. Global. Coronavirus, U.S. firm develops new test that can confirm cases in 30 minutes. California-based diagnostics firm Cepheid intends to use the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's emergency use authorization pathway for regulatory approval and make the test available globally. Street photo, Jason Hua.
So is that the same test we see on this picture, or is it a different test? On the website we see this picture, so that doesn't really show how these tests look. And the question is also, are there more reliable tests, or are the other ones worse? So I'm programmed to laugh when they change the words I want to speak with synthetic telepathy. I've explained this in previous broadcasts. So let's read the text, finally.
Published February 11, 2020, 12:50 p.m. Sergeant Facebook Twitter bio Ding Ui, Wang Xilan and Matthew Walsh Beijing, California, Caixin Global, as fears mount that an existing test to identify the coronavirus is failing to catch many of those infected, California-based diagnostics firm Cepheid said on Monday, February 10, it is developing an automated molecular test that is expected to deliver results in about 30 minutes. Once the product is finalized, Cepheid intends to use the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's emergency use authorization pathway for regulatory approval and make the test available globally. The company did not say when the new test would be available. China's ability to control the rapidly spreading coronavirus thought to have originated in Wuhan, Hubei province, has been under additional strain, as problems with so-called nucleic acid tests, NATs, widely used to confirm new cases make it likely that many infections are going uncounted. The authorities are still struggling to ascertain the true extent of the epidemic, which had infected more than 43,000 people and killed over 1,000 worldwide as of Tuesday. Health officials have recommended cheap, abundant, and generally accurate NATs as one of two main methods to confirm the presence of the coronavirus in humans. The technique involves collecting samples from patients and testing them for specific kinds of molecules that appear in the genetic material of the new coronavirus. If those molecules are present in the sample, the patient is isolated for treatment. False negatives. But there is growing concern that those NATs are producing large numbers of false negatives. In an interview with Chinese state broadcaster CCTV last week, Professor Wang Chen, an expert in critical diseases and director of the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences, said one characteristic of the virus was that not all of those infected by it returned positive NATs. Get alerts on the coronavirus outbreak. Get email updates from the Straits Times. Enter your email. Sign up by signing up. You agree to our privacy policy and terms and conditions. Even patients who definitely have the disease only come back positive 30% to 50% of the time, Professor Wang said. Testing throat swabs, from potentially infected people, also returns a lot of false negatives. Tests like NATs are especially important in people who may have contracted the virus but have not yet shown symptoms. Emerging trends in local infections mean that many such patients may have been sent home by hospitals after their NATs came back negative, doctors told Caixin. At the moment, more and more cases in Wuhan are flaring up collectively in family groups, and the majority are of the concealed onset type, said Dr. Zhang Ziashun, a deputy director of the medical imaging department at Zhongnan Hospital of Wuhan University, one of the institutions at the center of the outbreak. They may have undergone one or even several NATs and show no clinical symptoms, but keeping them under observation at home is bound to spread the disease further. Related story: Coronavirus. Read more stories from Streets coverage. Related story: Countries rush to build diagnostic capacity as coronavirus spreads. Related story: Coronavirus. Singapore scientists aim to test vaccine in as soon as 4 months. Related story: Coronavirus. China's Wuhan aims to test all suspected cases by Tuesday. A doctor in the imaging department of another major Wuhan hospital, who spoke on condition of anonymity, told Caixin that previously, some patients whose cord scans clearly showed signs of viral infection but whose NATs tested negative were released back into their communities due to a shortage of hospital berths. NATs are by nature an imperfect mechanism for determining the presence of a given organism. For instance, because the genetic material they test for usually only exists in tiny amounts, many NATs include a step called amplification, which makes many copies of it. A shortcoming of amplification is that it also copies any contaminating DNA in the sample, potentially causing misleading results. All experienced doctors know that NATs contain flaws, the doctor said. Gene sequencing aside from NATs, health officials have also recommended the use of gene sequencing to confirm coronavirus infections, but that method has its own problems. Although gene sequencing is comparatively accurate, it is also expensive, and not all affected hospitals have the necessary facilities. Additionally, at the start of the outbreak, many hospitals had to gain permission from higher authorities to conduct such tests, a rule that has since been relaxed. Experts have previously called for the inclusion of cord scanning as a key basis for diagnosing coronavirus infections, as well as rapid hospital admission and isolation. Related story: Interactive. What we know so far about the coronavirus in response to calls from medical professionals on the front lines of the epidemic. The National Health Commission last week relaxed the clinical criteria for reporting suspected coronavirus cases, with extra leeway granted to people in Hubei. Outside the stricken province, medical professionals should now suspect coronavirus infection in patients with radiographic evidence of pneumonia, fever and/or breathing problems, and a low to normal white blood cell count or a low lymphocyte count. Within Hubei, only 2 of the 3 criteria are required. This story was originally published by Caixin Global. Related stories: 1 patient works at the DBS Bank at Marina Bay Financial Center, while the other 2 went to Grace Assembly of God Church's sites in Tanglin, above, and Bukit Batok. Coronavirus: 3 new cases in Singapore, 2 from Grace Assembly of God Church, 1 from DBS. An illustration created at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, reveals ultrastructural morphology exhibited by the 2019 novel coronavirus. COVID-19 will be the new official name for the coronavirus. Novel coronavirus named COVID-19, WHO. A view of the CERTAS Integrated Operations Center on October 23, 2019, coronavirus. Infected CERTAS Cisco officer deployed at Caixin was not in close contact with performers or audience, says PA. A nucleic acid test, NAT, is a technique used to detect a particular nucleic acid sequence and thus usually to detect and identify a particular species or subspecies of organism. Often a virus or bacteria that acts as a pathogen in blood, tissue, urine, etc. NATs differ from other tests in that they detect genetic materials, RNA or DNA, rather than antigens or antibodies. Detection of genetic materials allows an early diagnosis of a disease because the detection of antigens and/or antibodies requires time for them to start appearing in the bloodstream. 1. Since the amount of a certain genetic material is usually very small, many NATs include a step that amplifies the genetic material, that is, makes many copies of it. Such NATs are called nucleic acid amplification tests, NATs. There are several ways of amplification, including polymerase chain reaction, PCR, strand displacement assay, SDA, or transcription-mediated assay, TMA. 2. Virtually all nucleic acid amplification methods and detection technologies use the specificity of Watson-Crick base pairing. Single-stranded probe or primer molecules capture DNA or RNA target molecules of complementary strands. Therefore, the design of probe strands is highly significant to raise the sensitivity and specificity of the detection. However, the mutants which forms the genetic basis for a variety of human diseases are usually slightly different from the normal nucleic acids. Often, they are only different in a single base, for example, insertions, deletions, and single nucleotide polymorphisms, SNPs. In this case, imperfect probe target binding can easily occur, resulting in false positive outcomes such as mistaking a strain that is commensal for one that is pathogenic. Much research has been dedicated to achieving single base specificity.
So that was the whole article, and then here I read: at this time, diagnostic testing for 2019 nCoV can be conducted only at CDC. And this is on the website of the CDC, cdc.gov. And, well, we can read this, of course. Page last reviewed February 2nd, 2020.
Interim guidelines for collecting, handling, and testing clinical specimens from persons under investigation, PWIS, for 2019 novel coronavirus, 2019 nCoV February 2, 2020. Healthcare providers should contact their local, state health department immediately to notify them of patients with fever and lower respiratory illness who traveled to Wuhan, China within 14 days of symptom onset. Local and state public health staff will determine if the patient meets the criteria for a person under investigation. For 2019 novel coronavirus, 2019 nCoV, clinical specimens should be collected from PWIS for routine testing of respiratory pathogens at either clinical or public health labs. Note that clinical laboratories should not attempt viral isolation from specimens collected from 2019 nCoV PWIS. At this time, diagnostic testing for 2019 nCoV can be conducted only at CDC. State and local health departments who have identified a PWIS should immediately notify CDC's Emergency Operations Center, OC, at 770-488-7100 to report the PWIS and determine whether testing for 2019 nCoV at CDC is indicated. The OC will assist local, state health departments to collect, store, and ship specimens appropriately to CDC, including during after hours or on weekends, holidays. Testing for other respiratory pathogens by the provider should be done as part of the initial evaluation and should not delay specimen shipping to CDC. If a PWIS tests positive for another respiratory pathogen, after clinical evaluation and consultation with public health authorities, they may no longer be considered a PWIS. Specimen type and priority for initial diagnostic testing for 2019 nCoV. CDC recommends collecting and testing upper respiratory, nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs, and lower respiratory, sputum. If possible, for those patients with productive coughs, induction of sputum is not indicated. Specimens should be collected as soon as possible once a PWIS is identified, regardless of the time of symptom onset. Maintain proper infection control when collecting specimens. General guidelines: store specimens at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and ship overnight to CDC on ice pack. Label each specimen container with a patient's ID number, for example, medical record number, unique specimen ID, for example, laboratory requisition number, specimen type, for example, serum, and the date the sample was collected. Complete the CDC Form 50.34 for each specimen submitted. In the upper left box of the form, 1, for test requested select respiratory virus molecular detection, non-influenza, CDC 10401 and 2, for at CDC, bring to the attention of Enter Stephen Lindstrom, 2019 nCoV PWIS. I. Respiratory specimens. A. Lower respiratory tract bronchoalveolar lavage, tracheal aspirate. Collect 2 to 3 milliliters into a sterile.
So it seems like they are blocking the speech engine with wireless energy. There is more than enough CPU and memory available. So why is the text-to-speech hanging all the time?
Leak-proof. Screw cap sputum collection cup or sterile dry container. Refrigerate specimen at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and ship overnight to CDC on ice pack. Sputum: have the patient rinse the mouth with water and then expectorate deep cough sputum directly into a sterile, leak-proof, screw cap sputum collection cup or sterile dry container. Refrigerate specimen at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and ship overnight to CDC on ice pack. B. Upper respiratory tract nasopharyngeal swab and oropharyngeal swab, NP/OP swab. Use only synthetic fiber swabs with plastic shafts. Do not use calcium alginate swabs or swabs with wooden shafts, as they may contain substances that inactivate some viruses and inhibit PCR testing. Place swabs immediately into sterile tubes containing 2 to 3 milliliters of viral transport media. NP and OP specimens should be kept in separate vials. Refrigerate specimen at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and ship overnight to CDC on ice pack. Nasopharyngeal swab. Insert a swab into the nostril parallel to the palate. Leave the swab in place for a few seconds to absorb secretions. Swab both nasopharyngeal areas with the same swab. Oropharyngeal swab, for example, throat swab. Swab the posterior pharynx, avoiding the tongue, Nasopharyngeal wash, aspirate or nasal aspirate. Collect 2 to 3 milliliters into a sterile, leak-proof, screw cap sputum collection cup or sterile dry container. Refrigerate specimen at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and ship overnight to C on ice pack. 2. Serum minimum volume required. Children and adults, collect 1 tube, 5 to 10 milliliters, of whole blood in a serum separator tube. Infant, a minimum of 1 milliliter of whole blood is needed for testing pediatric patients. If possible, collect 1 milliliter in a serum separator tube. Serum separator tubes should be stored upright for at least 30 minutes. And then centrifuged at 1000 to 1300 relative centrifugal force, RCF, for 10 minutes before removing the serum and placing it in a separate sterile tube for shipping, such as a cryovial. Refrigerate the serum specimen at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and ship overnight to C or on ice pack. 3. Shipping specimens. PWIS must be packaged, shipped, and transported according to the current edition of the International Air Transport Association, IATA, Dangerous Goods Regulations. External icon. Store specimens at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and ship overnight to C on ice pack. If a specimen is frozen at -70 degrees Celsius, ship overnight to C on dry ice. Additional useful and detailed information on packing, shipping, and transporting specimens can be found at an Interim Laboratory Biosafety Guidelines for Handling and Processing Specimens associated with 2019 Novel Coronavirus, 2019 nCoV. For additional information, consultation, or the C shipping address, contact the C Emergency Operations Center, OC, at 7704887100. Page last reviewed, February 2, 2020. Content source, National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, NCERD, Division of Viral Diseases.
Okay, so we can also take a look at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health Center for Health Security's Diagnostic testing for 2019 nCoV, January 28, 2020. So basically this was the whole broadcast already. I'm trying to find some more information about these tests. What types of tests are there? A swab might not detect it if it's in the bloodstream. The question is also, is it zoonotic and is it an antibody-dependent virus? Let me know if you know in the comments, or Skype Prologic 999.
Diagnostic testing for 2019 nCoV, January 28, 2020. Diagnostic testing for the novel coronavirus 2019 nCoV is undertaken using two approaches: whole genome sequencing and real-time reverse transcriptase PCR, RT-PCR. Sequencing was used primarily in the early days of the outbreak for initial identification of this novel virus and is largely a tool of viral discovery. Currently, almost all diagnostic testing for nCoV is done using RT-PCR. A person in the United States can be tested for 2019 nCoV when he or she meets the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, criteria for a 2019 nCoV patient under investigation. These criteria include both clinical features and epidemiologic risk, travel history or history of close contact with a confirmed case. One criteria as of January 30, 2020: clinical features and epidemiologic risk: fever and symptoms of lower respiratory illness, cough, difficulty breathing, and in the last 14 days before symptom onset, a history of travel from Wuhan City, China. Or in the last 14 days before symptom onset, close contact with a person who is under investigation for 2019 nCoV while that person was ill. Fever or symptoms of lower respiratory illness, cough, difficulty breathing, and in the last 14 days. Close contact with a no laboratory confirmed 2019 nCoV patient. Table from US CDC. https://www.cdc.gov/coronavirus/2019-CoV/clinical-criteria.html. Sample collection and handling practices when a patient is suspected of having 2019 nCoV infection based on the criteria above, and typically after other common respiratory viruses have been ruled out. Healthcare providers in the United States are asked to report that patient as a PI to infection control personnel at their healthcare facility and to their state health department. State health departments then report the PI to the CDC Emergency Operations Center, OC. CDC's OC then assists in collection, storage, and shipping of specimens for diagnostic testing. CDC recommends collection of 3 specimen types: lower respiratory, upper respiratory, and serum specimens. 2 CDC guidance states that clinical laboratories should not attempt viral isolation from 2019 nCoV samples. According to CDC, virus isolation in cell culture and initial characterization.
So I wonder, is there no blood test? Isn't this virus in the person's bloodstream as well? And I also wonder about the mechanism. So are the other tests more reliable, or are they all the same principle, etc.? I'm not a doctor, but I remember that with the Ebola test kits, they were very unreliable as well. So then what's the use?
Viral agents recovered in cultures of 2019 nCoV specimens are not recommended at this time, except at a BSL-3 facility. 2 CDC further states that standard biosafety work practices should be used for pathologic examination, molecular analysis, electron microscopic studies, routine examination of cultures, routine staining and microscopic analysis of fixed smears, final packaging of specimens for transport, and inactivated specimens. 2. Class 2 biosafety cabinets should be used to perform aliquoting and /or dilution of specimens, inoculating culture media, performing diagnostic tests that do not involve propagation of viral agents, nucleic acid extraction procedures, and preparation and chemical or heat fixing of smears for microscopic analysis. 2 Genetic sequencing. Now that the virus has been identified, most sequencing is being undertaken to further research in order to characterize the virus and monitor for viral mutation, not for clinical diagnosis. However, some sequencing is also being done to generate real-time epidemiologic information. For example, sequencers from Oxford Nanopore are being used in China as part of the Arctic project to develop an end-to-end system for processing samples from viral outbreaks, to generate real-time epidemiological information that is interpretable and actionable by public health bodies. The Arctic Network has released a set of materials to assist in sequencing, using Oxford Nanopore equipment. 3. China CDC has also been sequencing samples via Oxford Nanopore products, specifically MinION, to investigate clusters in this outbreak. 4 PCR testing protocols for RT-PCR testing developed by Germany, Hong Kong, China CDC, Thailand, and Japan have been posted to the WHO website. 5. And the protocol for testing in the US has been posted to CDC's site. 6. Tritt Universitätsmedizin in Berlin developed the first assay and protocol, US protocol, as of January 27, 2020. All RT-PCR tests on PIS for 2019 nCoV infection in the United States are being run at the CDC in Atlanta. But in the coming weeks, CDC anticipates sharing these tests with domestic and international partners through the agency's International Reagent Resource. 7.
So the real question is, are there any more reliable tests? And how reliable are they? Where can I find info about it?
Fact sheet. Diagnostic testing for 2019 nCoV-2 commercial RT-PCR test kits, described publicly as of January 23,8, include kits from BGI, China, Co-Diagnostics, US, and Altona, Germany. BGI has already worked with the Chinese CDC and other Chinese authorities to issue test kits to hospitals and local health authorities there. The company is also working with Hong Kong and Taiwan, Brunei, Thailand, Nigeria, and South Africa to supply kits. Co-Diagnostics has completed initial design of an RT-PCR test kit, and Altona has begun development of a test kit for 2019 nCoV detection. Neither of these kits has been put into use yet in the US or elsewhere. Rapid point-of-care tests as of January 27, 2020. There have been no announcements of the development of non-PCR-based rapid diagnostic tests. Of companies that have rapid PCR-based assays, Genmark DX has not announced anything related to 2019 nCoV. BioFire has not announced anything related to 2019 nCoV. Cepheid has not announced anything. However, their CMO for China recently co-authored an article on the virus in the Journal of Medical Virology. 9. Kimbio has not announced anything related to 2019 nCoV. Regulatory considerations. The Food and Drug Administration launched a landing page to provide information to the public and to product developers on the agency's response to the nCoV outbreak. The page includes an email address for diagnostic test sponsors interested in applying for an emergency use authorization.
So here we see the real star MERS-CoV N-gene RT-PCR kit 1.0. Nice colors. Looking good, looking good. So I haven't prepared this, I just thought this is important news. If 30 to 50% of the what was the thing? Let's read it so I don't make any errors. Only 30 to 50% of the people come back positive. Only 30% to 50% of the definitely infected people come back positive. So it misses 50 to 70% of the people that have it. They're tested negative, though they are positive. They definitely have it. They've already established that via other routes. As I understand it from Professor Wang. That's on straitstimes.com. Before going into this deeper, I will first do some more research and then I can do another broadcast if I find some more interesting information. I think this is already news, important news. And it's a US firm that has developed this new test. And what is the principle that it uses? Is it an RT-PCR? Probably it's a nucleic acid test, so it might not be the same thing. So isn't this test useless then? And are the other tests more accurate, and how accurate are they? Where can people find and doctors find information about this? CDC provides test protocol for new novel coronavirus. Sorry about that. I have too many other things to do, so I cannot do a live broadcast at the moment. I mean, at the moment I'm doing a live broadcast, so I can't do another one at the same time, etc. And I still have to have breakfast. So I thought, let's first upload this, and it looks like I'm not gonna find any website that shows all available tests and how accurate they are right now. So perhaps somebody could do a broadcast about it. I'm just trying to cover what's most important at this time to save the maximum number of human lives. And that includes exposing people that advocate a population reduction with any number and making clear they should be prosecuted, arrested, and or replaced with more competent people. They should not be in our government that is paid by the taxpayers to protect and serve the citizens. So for now, I think this is it for this broadcast. Please like, subscribe, and share on your timeline. And see you all next time on Perfect Society. Do stuff for universal peace. Kiss for single females who would like one. And see you all next time. And remember to do healing stuff. Check out the other videos also on Perfect Society. Peace out.